a vested interest to secure their data and secure their systems because they're critical to the nation's infrastructure, they're critical to conducting operations, they're critical in general. So the government invests the time, energy, and effort to put together security policy. So what is cybersecurity? To you, what is cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity is basically, there are three kinds: confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and you need to make sure that you protect all those things. Implementing security control and compliance is just the beginning. Obviously, compliance is just for me, it's a check in the box.
Right.
But you have to look at all the technical operational management controls to make sure that you're protecting your data. And without data, what are you protecting?
Right.
So it's basically you're protecting your data in critical infrastructure. Implementing these security controls.
Well, that was a really good definition. I like that. Cybersecurity used to be called information assurance. It's been called it's had a bunch of monikers that were just the compliance police. And we've seen, history will tell us that that approach doesn't work. Cybersecurity protocols that have been in place for the last 15, 20 years don't work. So everybody's having to rethink the way they approach system security because of the breaches, the massive breaches that have happened in OPM and Equifax and Facebook. Recently, Facebook was leaking data. They were knowingly leaking data, but why were they doing that? Why were they allowing that to happen? And that's like a policy problem, not a security problem. But it's all encompassing into what cybersecurity is. The way the government sees cybersecurity right now is it's done in a couple of different measures. There's passive measures that you would take, so that's where the compliance stuff still hasn't gone away. You're not going to get rid of having to stick in boxes. Like, you're still going to have to harden your machines, but there's also active measures that can be taken. Right in between active measures and passive measures are things like sniffing network traffic to detect anomalies and taking a deeper look into the network itself instead of just continuously hardening systems down to where they're not functional. It's easier to just detect anomalies, and then when there's an anomaly, then do something about it, but you got to have the data to know. So what is automation? You might be familiar with automation. What is automation to you?
More than just bash scripts like you're saying.
Right.
It's anything that is code that executes in an environment and either stands up infrastructure or stands up applications. It's taking the human engineer and turning it into a software engineer.
Okay.
So it's like an additional member of the team, but it doesn't get tired.
So the way I see automation and why I wrote bash just won't do anymore, because bash does work. If you want to automate something and you write a bash script, it will continuously run, but what happens when there's a problem? What happens when there's an error? Well, you as the bash scripter have to handle that error just like you would in any programming language. You could write these automation in Python or Perl or Ruby, or pick your language here, but you have to handle everything. So what's happening in the industry is communities of people are gathering together to say, let's just solve these problems and handle all that stuff one time and just let everybody else use it. So if you look at a tool, I'm going to use Ansible because it's the easiest tool, in my opinion, to use. If you look at Ansible, the engineers that are putting together the modules do all of the heavy lifting as far as how this module should run, what it should run against, how do you handle errors, how do you handle failures, what should be returned. All that stuff is pre-engineered for you, so all you have to do is just grab the module, plug some data into it, and it will apply whatever you tell it to apply. And these automation languages, Salt, Ansible, Puppet, they're changing the way that people interact with their systems. So when you couple together compliance and automation, you get cybersecurity automation, and that allows you to have a holistic view, compliance view of your system. So you're able to broadly apply policy and do it in a very repeatable fashion. So you can move on. Like, compliance is only the beginning. Compliance is the start, it's not the end. And coupling together these compliance controls, or these system controls, along with automation, allows you to it allows you to move on to the next step and get onto those more passive or more active security defensive measures. Most people never make it past this step where they have security controls applied in their entire environment and they don't have to continuously check them, or they always get out of whack and nobody ever goes back and turns them back on. Some guy logs in his root, changes the password to something simple just because he's trying to run a test, and then never changes it back. Why does that happen? Just because it does. I mean, we're all human. To be human is to err. And so when you have an automation language, you don't have to worry about applying the system policy anymore. It's easier. So I kind of already covered why we want to automate cybersecurity. The reason we want to automate that, the cybersecurity policies and practices, is because we want a standardized way to interface with these systems. It's got to happen the same way every time. So when I make a change in my automation system, it ripples down to everything else that's connected to it. My entire environment all looks the same, or generally the same, with few exceptions. And security can't be bolted on after. This is not something you do after you engineer a system. This is something that's done in the beginnings of engineering any system, any information system. So we've talked a little bit about what cybersecurity is, and a little bit about what automation is, and coupling those two together and why that's important. So now, what tools are available to you to use to start implementing these policies? So how would you generate a system security plan and maybe get the scripts to like start automating this stuff? So there's a few tools out there right now. Which one of them I'm going to show you today? OpenSCAP. Have you ever heard of OpenSCAP? I know you've heard of OpenSCAP, and I think I already did a talk here on what OpenSCAP is, but there's been some interesting developments. OpenSCAP used to just allow you to generate a bash script, which we already talked about. Why not bash? Why no bash? Because it's hard to handle the errors. It's not easy to work with. So there's this tool called the SCAP Workbench. I've loaded a policy into this. It's the Fedora policy. This is a Fedora machine. So I've loaded the Fedora policy, and I've got inside of the Fedora policy, I've only got two profiles, a standard system security profile and default profile, which doesn't have anything. And this is stuff that's freely available on the internet right now. It's called, go to OpenSCAP.org. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a scan on my box. And before, OpenSCAP used to generate remediation. If you told it you wanted it to remediate a system, it would do the remediation for you. But it did the remediation using bash. So how would I get a bash script into my automation system? So it used to be people wanted viewed servers, right? With cloud computing, now people have hundreds, if not thousands of servers. And how do you keep control of all these things? Well, you have to have some sort of automation system. So you've got the Ansible Tower and Puppet and Chef and SaltStack and all those things. How do you feed this security content, or even generate that content to feed it into there? The problem comes with you are either writing this security policy or these security controls yourself, or you could use community developed content that has more than one person's eyes on it. And as soon as this scan is done, I'll be able to show you where the changes are at. So now OpenSCAP generates an Ansible role for you, and it generates Puppet modules for you to put into your automation system. Where OpenSCAP before only generated a bash script, which is very hard to load into a centralized automation system. With the ability to generate an Ansible role, I can then take this role, export it, and connect it into my Ansible tower. So I only do the security work once. And after the security work is done, I hand that over to the automation team or the automation system, and that gets broadly applied to everything. And Ansible handles errors very well. It handles failures very well. You'll know exactly why something failed, and you'll be able to go back and fix just that one individual piece. And it's a continuous process. RMF has taught us that security is not something that's done once and then you just totally forget about it. It's a continuous monitoring, continuous evaluation, and coupling that together with an automation system gives you that capability where before you really didn't have it. It was just slideware. It was just vaporware. It didn't really exist in a manner that worked. Ansible works. Puppet works.
Is OpenSCAP a Red Hat project?
It is a Red Hat project. However, there are a ton of systems. I can show you the list of profiles that are available to you today. So down here, if you look down here now, if I want to generate a remediation role, I still generate it in Bash, I can generate it in Ansible, and I can generate it in Puppet. So depending on, there's no Salt or Chef there yet because I haven't contributed into OpenSCAP, but with these automation systems that you have available right now, you can make this very easy for people to apply because security is complicated and boring. Nobody cares, nobody wants to do it. They have to do it, but they don't.
And I see a big use of this tool in emission control systems because that's what I do. And most of the emission control systems, they are separate from the regular IT environment. And they can set up something like this in their environment and secure their Linux machines.
Let me focus this a little bit better. There we go. Oh, that's much better. So here is all the SCAP content that's shipped right now. Fedora, Red Hat OpenStack Platform, RHEL 6, RHEL 7, CentOS 6, CentOS 7, Chromium, Debian 8, EAP, Firefox, Fuse, JRE, Oracle Linux 7, OpenSUSE, Scientific Linux 6, Scientific Linux 7, SUSE 11, SUSE 12, Ubuntu 14.04, Ubuntu 16.04, and what does that say? I can't even Win Linux is that it looks like. WRT Linux. All those are all the profiles that ship by default. You can create your own profile if you want to create your own profile and be able to generate and apply this content. And you just use this oval standardized format. And this is a really great tool to help develop your system security plan. It's not something that you would use to actually implement. This is not an automation system. This is something that you would use to generate. You would generate that output that's required to.
And then you hand it off to your automation people.
Right. If you check out like the AWX project, it's upstream for Ansible Tower. You could load this Ansible role into there, and it would just go out and broadly apply that to everything. It said WRT Linux. It looked like Windows.
Oh, WRT is I think it's that.
It's the router distro,
right?
Yeah, it's like the router distro. And then there's other SCAP, and it says other SCAP content, which I've never even
If
clicked.
you want to load your own.
Oh yeah. So it's asking.
So it'll take an XCCDF and any of like any of the standards.
Right. And if DISA publishes their own content, or DHS publishes their own content, then you could easily load that in here. You could ad hoc that on. You could create customized versions of this if you want to go in here and say, you know what, I don't care about this particular control. It gives you all the data, exactly what the control is and what it's going to do.
So you can actually customize the policy that you want and do not want, and then generate the output from it.
So customization would let you edit those parameters.
Yes, it will. So if I go into this before I run this scan, and I tell it to do something, I can create or grab a customization file. I can use this to generate a customization file that will say like apply this STIG, don't apply that STIG, or this control. So that kind of brings us to the next step, which is, so we've got a tool that can generate a policy for us, but what policy do we want to generate? How do we know what we want to do? There's been a project called OpenControl that's been created to kind of solve how that's defined. How do we make this simpler? Because have you guys ever read OVAL or XCCDF?
Yeah.
It's not readable.
No.
You can't use that. That's not human readable. So OpenControl is as they say on their website, a YAML-powered antidote to bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is quite necessary, but the mechanism in which it's distributed is not. We can make this easier to consume. So OpenControl provides a human-readable definition for all these security policies. SSPTool, this is probably the most interesting thing I'm going to show you guys today. It is really, really.
System security plan tool?
Yeah. Hold
Really?
on. Let me get to it.
You use it to develop an SSP?
Yeah, that
There we go.
would make my life a little easier.
Oh yes.
We got people crawling all over that.
So SSPTool is still very much in development, still very, very alpha. But that's exactly what it is. It's a system security plan tool. So I pick the component that I want. Let's say I'm going to use Red Hat Identity Management. It tells me all the controls through all the systems that apply to it.
So it maps to an application?
It maps everything, and it's got planned and complete here. Whether this is actually in the tool is still in development. We accept pull requests. So
there's the control section.
Right,
of the SSP, right?
right. This system security plan tool will allow you to pick a system, and then you can get you'll be able to generate a report to say this is what my system security plan looks like, and also maybe kick out some paperwork along with it, which is very
So
interesting.
how do you differentiate this tool with the regular GRC tool that are out there?
I guess so. I don't really know it, but I don't know much about GRC.
It's governance, risk, and compliance tools, and they're saying that you get away from the documentation, you have those GRC tools, you standardize and put all the documentation, compliance documentation in one place. And some of the tools actually, once you provide the data, it generates SSP risk assessments and forms and everything for you.
That's what this tool will do, but this tool is open source.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's a proprietary product made by
Yeah,
Steve.
there are multiple.
You're talking about the guy at GRC Security?
GRC is a general term that we use for these tools, but DOJ develops this tool called CSAM. It is a GRC tool, and it's being across the government. They're trying to push it quite a bit.
So
OpenPrisma is another GRC tool, which is an open source, and that does pretty much, not maybe that extent, but it does quite a bit.
So how do they relate that to a project or a product? Because I mean, they have I'm sure they have generalized stuff in there, or maybe things that they're using, but the government is traditionally bad at writing.
Yeah, so CSAM tool everybody loves to hate because it's a tool that organizations use, and then as us as a contractors, we have to do it because government has bought it and we have to use it, and we all hate it, but we have to use it.
Right. So this tool is designed around picking a standard certification, and then you pick a product that aligns with it, and it just spits everything out for you. It does all the system security plan work. In addition, so the one tab that's not on here is remediation, but the next tab to come on here is remediation. So not only will it generate all your paperwork to put all of your stuff together for your system, give you a solid plan, security plan, it will also generate the remediation. So whatever state your systems are at, it will generate Ansible automation. It will be back-ended by OpenSCAP. So when I put together my system security plan, not only do I get all of my paperwork, I also get all of the automation to load into my automation system policy.
You have
So I
RMF
could
Step
show-
2 and RMF Step 6 already taken care of in the same spell swoop, right?
Right. Yeah. Everything that you needed to do to generate your HEO paperwork, it will be in one tool that is open source, and Red Hat has done a really good job of
the paperwork as well as it takes care of the technical aspect of the control implementation and pushing out the policies to infrastructure devices.
Right. So this is not something that would be likely on-prem. This is something that would generate all the requirements that you need to meet to load into your automation system. More often than not in the government space, they're disconnected anyway, so wouldn't do a lot of good to have. Maybe you could have an on-prem version. That might be slightly helpful, but how would you get updates? This is something that's going to get continuously updated. This is really cool, and it's just in its infancy. So if you would like to get involved in a project that is applicable to what you do, this is a good tool, a good way to get started. Also, if I click on a component in here, so like let's click on OpenShift Container Platform and then pick a control. So AC14. What else does this control apply to? So if I have other projects or products in my environment, I would be able to see, okay, well, this control applies to pretty much everything in my environment, so I need to generate automation to apply to everything, not just pointed at one specific system. You'll know every system that it applies to. And right now, it's just a couple of guys working on it, so it still needs work, but it is moving forward. It's come a long way. So, let's go back to my presentation. So that's SSPTool. And then we already talked a little bit about Ansible. So a lot of the security compliance stuff is being generated in Ansible, and there's a good reason for that. Everything else out there, every other automation engine besides Bash, needs an agent on the other side to effectively operate. Where Ansible is agentless, it's fully agentless, so you can just reach into any system, and also it can reach into network devices, which typically a Chef or a Puppet or something like that can't reach into a network device to configure that too. So if I generate a system security plan, I could also include my network devices in that automation and make sure that that firewall policy is applied or this switch rules are in place.
And
so
you
I have
need some of your controls anyway.
Right, yeah, and I have a comprehensive way to maintain the security of my environment. So I can get past compliance. Everybody needs to just get past that phase. Move through it, automate that stuff. It's boring, just automate it. Spend a little bit of time in the beginning, well, a lot of time in the beginning, generating a solid plan, generate the automation, and then you'll never have to touch it again. You won't have to worry about it because you'll know that it works. And if there's a change that comes up during RMF or during a reevaluation, then you can make that change very simply in your automation system as opposed to going around every box and hand jamming all this stuff. This is boring. Is that fun to anybody? Not fun to me. That's it. That's all I got.
What's the tool before, after OpenSCAP actually that you mentioned?
Oh, yes. Open control is more of a definition than a tool, but it makes the content consumable. So like trying to understand what these control, like when we look at our STIG or something like that, it's just not consumable. Yeah. I don't hate my life. I don't want to look at XML. That's terrible. I want to look at something that I can read, and that's what open control is kind of about. So, and I'm sure there's more stuff that maybe I'm missing in there that open control will do, but it's like a compliance and policy schema.
Okay.
I guess would be the best way to say that.
So it's an XML itself then.
Yeah, it reads and make it a human readable.
It's YAML format. It will put out a format that's consumable for other systems, but a human can still read it. So there'll be something that generates that XML. But right now, if you get an XCCDF file, you're not going to be able to sort through it and have no idea what it says. Like.
You need a parser of some sort to get through all that.
Yeah, well, even with a parser, it's still not exactly usable because the way that it's put together, the tiniest mistake, it's just prone to error. YAML's easier to work with. So some of the other things that are happening in the security world right now is people are using software-defined infrastructure to do more than compliance measures. So the next step past compliance measure is monitoring. When I say monitoring, I mean sniffing packets off the network, not scanning systems. You don't want to be seen. When you're doing these passive measures, the idea is that if somebody is in your systems, they are also watching you, so you don't want to be viewable to them. You're just trying to detect the anomalies that they're sending out.
If you could sit on an end node and see what an ACAS scan is looking at, it's not looking at this. This is where I can play. Right,
yeah. and they a lot of the times these attackers come in, and it's more efficient for them to just leave and come back at a later time because they already know how to get in. If they see, the system administrator does X, Y, or Z, his daily routine is to come in, logs into his email. These are the kind of things that he does. When he starts kicking off security scans of everything, it's just kind of obvious that he sees something's wrong, and they're going to pull out, and you'll never find it. And the idea with this passive monitoring measure of analyzing network traffic analyzing anything that doesn't require an intrusive measure, anything that would not allow you to be the defender, to be a detective, is kind of where this
It's
is
almost
going.
like you'd almost have to put a network device in promiscuous mode or something to send all that stuff off to you without, I'd say,
I think it's behavior
You might-
based.
yeah.
And look at the behavior.
You look at the behavior. It's a much deeper look into system security than what people are used to doing. And then of course there's got to be analytics and data that back that up. So you need some sort of log aggregation system. You would need to be able to do analytics on that log aggregation system and know what's normal. Like if SD Linux throws an error every 30 minutes because there's an app that just isn't configured right.
Yeah,
That's normal, but when it starts throwing an error every 5 seconds, you've got a problem. Something needs to be checked, and you need to be alerted to know that there is a real problem that's happening. So that's kind of where passive security is going, and then of course active security is been the same way. It
Yeah,
always is.
host-based security I see very, it needs to be there because a couple of weeks ago I was working with a client. We need to do the penetration testing for them. So I set up a phishing campaign and I send out a payload to them and encrypt it so that antivirus does not detect it and everything. So one user click on the email, open up the payload, it was not getting detected by the antivirus. So once it got injected into the memory, it started doing its work. So they have Cisco SourceFire endpoint protection system running on them. It detected the behavior and blocked it.
Right.
So I was moving laterally on the network from this computer to another computer to another computer, it just blocked me like that. So yes, you can encrypt the data and you can encrypt the payload, you can have user execute the payload, but what you're doing after the fact, that needs to be passively detected based on the behavior of the payload that is going around on the network, and that is very important.
They can't know what your measures are. You, the defender, the offensive people can't know what your measures are. Otherwise, they'll know how to get around them. So you have to be just as silent on the network as they are. Otherwise, you're detected by the attacker, and they'll just find a different way. Interesting stuff. And then, of course, active security measures are when you go out and start ripping apart the network and scanning every box and being noticed. You start firing off missiles. The attacker's going to notice, but hopefully you've already figured out who it is, and you can do something about it. So that's pretty much it for cybersecurity automation. It's not a very robust topic, and is fairly boring, but
That's interesting.
it's interesting to me because I see a lot of this in my day job. I work with Army Cyber, and they are an interesting group of people to work with, and they have some interesting ideas about how system security is done. I didn't get to the infrastructure, software-defined infrastructure stuff. So people are starting to use software-defined infrastructure. Let's say there was a network attack happening. Why can't I just pick everything up and shift it over? Why do I have to stay on the networks that I'm on with software-defined infrastructure? It doesn't really matter, does it? And getting everybody to care less about where things are at and why they're there, just be able to pick that whole thing up, shift it over here, is where you can use infrastructure, software-defined infrastructure, to start enhancing the system's overall security. If an attack is coming from a box that's been compromised and we can't turn it off or we can't get to it, why not just be able to throw a firewall up in front of it like that? It doesn't make any sense that we have the capability, but we just don't implement the plan. And software-defined infrastructure, so the OpenSCAPs of the world, the Kubernetes of the world, will help in getting that kind of reaction time. There's an anomaly that's been detected on the network. Start filtering traffic into an IDS or filter everything. This is not normal. It's going to slow everything down, but we don't want to shut down operations. And you could do that with software-defined infrastructure. It's very difficult to do that with the old hardware appliances. So a lot of the time you got to go to the console, or you got to SSH in, and there's not an efficient way to do every device. And when you have 1,000 of them, it takes you forever to do it anyway. So it's not feasible.
Yeah, the orchestration capability, the scenario you mentioned a second ago, where you have a misbehaving device within your software-defined infrastructure. You know it's compromised, you know it's doing bad things, and you throw up the firewall in front of it, you have it quarantined more or less, but you still can keep operating because it's software defined. You spin up a clone of it, move
Right.
your good data over to it, and if everything's working right, your users don't know the difference.
Right. Yeah. If you are properly architected, you wouldn't have those kind of problems. You could easily quarantine that box and maybe let it have outbound traffic, so you can figure out where this is coming
So
from.
you have several
but
of them
nothing
running.
inbound.
You have their load balance between the two of them, A, B, and C. A is compromised. Just quarantine A, let B and C keep operating, spin up another A, and keep your old. Then you can forensically and analyze the bad one. Hopefully the intruder's still there and you can catch. If you don't let them know that you quarantined it.
Right.
Depends on what their tools are, I guess.
Right.
If their tools don't give them that visibility that they've been quarantined, and they think they're just that they're going to keep doing those things and
Right.
reveal more about themselves.
Right. You might be able to. You could also put up a proxy and break and inspect their traffic, and they won't even know that it's happening. But it has to be automated as soon as you introduce a human into that environment. They just don't react fast enough.
Yeah.
Computers are much faster
Yeah.
at determining problems than humans are. And given a certain amount of logic and software-defined infrastructure, any of those things are entirely possible and usable today. It's infrastructure that is available today. Technology is available right now. All the stuff that I talked about today, it's available right now, with the exception of SSPTool that's still being worked on. But everything else out there, the OpenSCAP workbench, OpenSCAP in general, is a project that continues to evolve, that can help in this whole cybersecurity war. Any questions? Any other questions I can answer?
I monitor a lot of the SCAP email lists. One that Sean Wells, I guess, was a he's feeding into some of this, I would think, especially the
Yes.
workbench type things.
Yeah. So Sean is the maintainer of SCAP Security Guide. So everything SCAP is his baby, and SSPTool is also his. Sean is now he's the CTO of security at Red Hat and Red Hat Public Center. So there's a lot of interesting, a lot of interesting movement happening in the security world. In the next 5 years is really gonna shake the industry up. Things are definitely gonna change, and make it easier on everybody. Because the problem to this day has been that it's not easy to implement these types of things. Like, does anybody do this on their home network? Do you secure your boxes at home?
I just ran an OpenSCAP on this thing and I failed like 75 of them.
So you could easily generate a playbook to remediate that right now and be done. Move on. And then roll back what's broken. There's no good reason not to do it. There's no good reason not to secure your box. If it doesn't break your system, why do you care? Just apply the policy, and then you have less problems.
Well, there's a couple of problems of having like the temp directory on a different hard drive.
Oh, that's stuff like that. You also have to look at the risk. So there's a risk chart in there. If you view did I even bring up the HTML? I didn't even bring up the HTML report. Let me do that. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Sure.
So when you run SCAP, if you click view report, this is what's generated. So you are told, like, this system security is terrible because I just put it together and I am yet to secure it. But you're told what you passed, what you failed, and what didn't matter. And you can group the rules by severity. So if something's really, really important to secure, it'll be in the high category. And this is industry standard guidance. Like, NIST got together with industry partners to put together this hardening guidance, along with security experts the world around. And maybe there's something better that could be done, but for right now, this is what we have.
All the Cat 1 states.
Good news is I have no high severity, so.
You have no Cat 1, so that's not bad.
I got
See, I've got all kinds of.
mediums
I've got all
and
kinds of them.
I ran the workbench against one of my machines a few years ago, and I fixed a few of them and just broke everything.
Right.
Nothing worked.
Yeah, that's the problem with if you apply all these things, because then you go into the risk management and you have to create those deviations, and configuration management process is just a pain to deal with after that. I mean, the organization that has maturity level as high, where you have configuration management in place, you run a tool like this, and then you say, okay, we need to make these changes, we need to deviate from these changes,
Yeah.
and then you go and you have to document everything, and that's where people just like, I don't want to do it.
Right. Well, there's nothing to prevent you from securing your own network and starting with your own network first, your own equipment first. The tools are free. And if something breaks, then you just roll it back and you don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about documenting it. Like, I'm not going to put together a Word doc for myself to say.
The bureaucracy is not a problem.
Yeah, bureaucracy is not a problem. Man, just click run.
But I do a lot of security work in the ship control system, and the SCADA engineers and the ship control system engineers,
Yeah.
they are paying to use it. They just don't like any change on their control network at all.
Alright, that calls shenanigans. I failed the enable randomized layout of virtual address space, but when I verified the setting, it's currently set to 2, which is the pass criteria.
So,
What operating system are you on?
Ubuntu 1804, I think.
The scan's only for 1604.
Well, yeah, but
It'll do most of it.
It's still the same.
I would ask Canonical why their stig's not up to date.
yeah, you're gonna have false positive like that.
You will,
Because of
and
working
it's not perfect. Everybody has to understand that the security thing is not perfect. It's ever evolving, it's ever changing.
Having had to do SSPs a few times, I am well versed in the act of what is it? Not remediation.
POAM.
No, POAM, but there's an even shorter word for it. POAM is a plan of
action milestones.
right. No, I'm talking about the act of getting a waiver. There we go.
Oh, waiver.
Oh, exception.
Exception.
Well, not, I don't know. It's this thing specifically says I've got this setting, the system CTL setting correct, but I failed to scan. It would be, hey, system owner, your stuff's broken, your scan's broken. Here's the verification that it's set properly, and then they sign a little thing that says.
Right. I mean, but it doesn't have to be just government applicable. There's no reason not to secure your own box. There's no reason not to secure your. So the DDoS, the DNS attack that happened, probably 10 months ago now?
The dying DNS.
Had everybody just secured their own network, they wouldn't have been able to do that. That wouldn't have worked. The only reason that worked is
even though
because
the devices were, that's what we talked about outside. Devices were hackable, but if you couldn't get to them, if people had just secured and updated their endpoint devices, that DDoS attack wouldn't have happened. That's on the home user. That's not on the government to protect, and they can't.
Well, there was even the Memcache D ones that was the same kind of. It wasn't a DNS attack. It was just you could request from Memcache D a certain thing that was very low amount of data request, but the response was basically dumping out the entire Memcache D stuff in cache. So you could request something that was probably like 8 bits, and you get back terabytes of data. But then you tell it, you spoof the IP address, and it would go. They did it to GitHub. GitHub was getting like a terabyte of data a second.
Right.
And it was because people had all these Memcache D servers that were vulnerable out on the internet. For caching, like I mean I kind of get it, but probably want to put some sort of web server in between a Memcache D server and the internet.
Well, I mean the thing where it really boils down to is system security is not just for the government. It's for everybody. Everybody needs to work harder and will be less vulnerable. And then the security of systems can evolve.
If everybody has rebooted their home router yet?
What?
Yes,
Your
we
home
need
router?
to. Updated the firmware, rebooted my daughter's routers, yes, and all that.
Sense on like a custom thing. Do I have to reboot it still?
It's not not every router.
Not on all of them.
They have a list of routers that needs to be rebooted for the
Yes.
VPN filter.
I was hearing about that on This Week in Tech last week.
Yeah.
Reboot your router.
Very good.
It's on top of it.
I just got rid of my pfSense box because it performs terribly. You should go check out my thread on the pfSense forum on hardware performance.
But I do, even though
Did you build your own or did you buy their hardware?
I built an I should have just bought one directly from them. It would have cost me a little bit more money, not a lot of it more money, and it probably would have worked and I could have got help. But I built a direct clone of exactly what they shipped, down to the card, the specific model of cards and everything, model of RAM, the whole nine.
Besides, that was more fun to do anyway.
It's not fun now, and it just performs very badly. So I
can't update it for crap. Every time I go to run an update, it fails the update, but it runs fine.
So, do you guys have any other further questions that I could answer about cybersecurity and automation? It's a ever-evolving space. It's not.
What's the one way to protect yourself from all of this?
Turn your computer.
Every time.
Put your server in a lockbox.
Just turn it off.
Unplug the network cable from it.
It's never gonna happen. We would turn off, but
It's hard to compromise a box that's turned up. I have a storage server that I have all my critical data
Power it down, that's right.
that I power on. It replicates all the data from all of my systems, and then it turns itself back off because I don't want to lose
Is
it.
it in the same location as your other data?
What
Your storage box.
What do you mean? Is it in the same location? as
Is it
yours?
in the same room? Is it in the same house?
I think it's a fun question.
You need to move it to another location. Like
I don't have another location. I'm doing the best I can.
I'll let you store it at my house for some runtime
You
on
would
your
be
system.
really
Geodiversity.
upset with how loud it is. You would be
So I
very
have a
upset.
virtual machine for all my banking, so I just open the virtual machine, do my banking, and shut it down.
We both run PF Sense. We can
I don't run PFSense anymore. I run OpenSCAP on my edge. But I do have a GRE overlay that goes over the internet to a whole bunch of other endpoints.
It's conjoined on network.
Okay.
So I'll replicate your data for you. Just like we got
I don't
other
think your
runs.
I don't know that my internet would like that.
Patrick's
very
into
much.
cloud services here.
I'm still jealous of his. What did you say? You had a couple of thousand.
I've got a couple hundred CPUs, a couple terabytes of RAM.
Bitcoin mining. It's like a Bitcoin operation going on.
It's classified.
Classified.
No, I have an OpenStack because I have an OpenStack that goes all the way out to my edge now. So that's like the edge of my network is the OpenStack network node because I use firewall as a service to secure the edge router in OpenStack. And it will
Remember a
run
couple of years
clusters.
ago when Donny did his talk on OpenStack, he invited everybody. I think you shut that down now, but he had an operating OpenStack installation that he invited us to log into.
I was kind of paying attention to it, but I was running my own stuff on his system. I was like, oh man, I got my own web server now.
I need to look into OpenStack. I've never worked with OpenStack yet.
OpenStack is the way you build a private AWS. If you need to build a private AWS, if you need AWS like infrastructure and you don't want to pay them, OpenStack's the way to do it. That's what it's for. It's not for virtualization. It's not a hypervisor. KVM is a hypervisor. OpenStack is a set of APIs to define hardware in software. That's what it's for.
It's no longer a dumpster fire.
Right.
That's
I mean,
the new
it really has come quite a long ways in the last couple of years. There's this.
You know how AWS has the relational database service?
Yeah.
OpenStack has the exact same thing. They have the ability that you can click a button and get a Postgres managed database as a service through OpenStack. They have a
Container management service, like Magnum, the container management. You want to spin up Kubernetes, it'll do it like that.
And it's all in your own data center. So you've got, let's say you're a government agency, and you've already bought all these data centers many moons ago. And you're like, well, we can move to AWS, or we can build our own AWS. That's where OpenStack is coming.
And there are a couple agencies out there that are doing that.
Even a couple
Because
of
it's
years
cheaper. Amazon was never meant to be cheaper. It was meant to be easier.
Yeah.
It's meant to be easier, not cheaper.
It ends up kind of being, well, it depends. If you use DynamoDB, it's definitely not cheaper. But it ends up being cheaper because you're no longer spending the man hours to build that infrastructure. You can push buttons and get the infrastructure. So you're paying more in the actual service, but you're paying less in the actual paying of people like us to run.
For like a medium-sized business, AWS makes sense. Once you get to large size businesses, it makes less sense.
The
It's
thing that
cheaper.
always cracks me up is I see some people with DynamoDB. DynamoDB is the document database type thing. It's a
Like
NoSQL.
MongoDB.
Yeah. Some people will run that, and their AWS bill will be 99% DynamoDB, and it's like $1 million a month.
Mhm.
It's just crazy. But they've got petabytes of data in a instantly queryable database.
Right.
Maybe it's worth it, but it's still. I don't like DynamoDB. I love it. It's very.
OpenStack is how you build private versions
Yeah.
of Amazon. It's the only real competitor to building a private cloud. You want to, I mean, the future is not public cloud. The future is hybrid cloud. That's what people are saying is going to happen. That's what I'm seeing happen in the rest of the industry. Is that
For
people
enterprises, hybrid cloud.
for even all the way down to medium-sized business, people want to have some on-prem infrastructure. They don't, if they can run some stuff themselves, like data they really care about, or apps that need to be kept in-house, or stuff that they want local to their network, so that when the internet breaks, they don't have to shut down their operation, stuff like that. They still have some on-prem infrastructure. They might massively reduce it down to a very small scale. Only have 5 or 10 servers where they used to have hundreds. Now they've pushed all that stuff to Amazon, but they still have critical services on-prem. That's never going to go away because people have already learned that lesson the hard way. So when your internet breaks, it sucks. Yeah, and then Kubernetes. So people are also looking at Kubernetes. So if you look at companies like Black Duck is making security tools and packaging them in a Kubernetes template. And Kubernetes, OpenShift allows you to build containers from source code. So I hand OpenShift code, it craps out a container that'll run inside of Kubernetes along with a template. And this is very useful for disconnected environments where they're secure, because the only thing you need to do is bring the text file over from the online Kubernetes to the offline Kubernetes, and it will do the exact same thing and give you a very repeatable build process. To move software from high side to low side to high side, all I need to do is move the text file. That's it. That's all it is, and that's pretty easy to justify. Like, okay, I've got to move this from high to low. I have to do it. Instead of having to have data come along with that, or an app come along with that, text file. That's it.
So what kind of firewalls are running in OpenStack?
I use firewall as a service. It's a thing.
In OpenStack.
In OpenStack, it's a thing. It's IP tables. It's a firewall.
So it's easy to manage?
Same as any other firewall. Manage by fine-grained management of rules, with the understanding that in OpenStack they don't consider home networks. If you need to do NAT, if you need to do destination NAT, it'll still do it. You just have to go on the command line to do it. It will not do it. There's no UI, but I mean, I manage the whole thing from a UI. I can click and drag networks and put networks together. If it wasn't locked down right now, then I would be able to log into it. I'm still working on getting things opened up the way I want them to be opened up.
Call it flags?
No, I just call it firewall as a service. There's also VPN as a service, so it'll dynamically spin up a VPN, so it's not running all the time and eating resources. When you need a VPN, it's there on demand. And you can even make it, so these APIs, so firewall as a service is an API. It comes with a default implementation, which is IP tables. But I could hook that to any other backend. So let's say I had a hardware firewall that was OpenStack compatible. I could hook firewall as a service to my actual hardware firewall and then manage everything through me. So these old devices, or these devices that come with a non-standard space, like a SOAP API or something like that, you can hook that to OpenStack, and then you get a nice standardized REST API that you make the same call to do the same thing every single time. It doesn't matter what the backend hardware is. That's the point of OpenStack. Is it's a set of front-end APIs that manage hardware resources through a standardized API endpoint. That's very similar to Amazon's, or in some cases a direct one.
From an administrator standpoint, with firewall as a service.
Mhm.
Does it work with systemd commands like firewall CMD and that kind of thing?
So
Or-
you would make REST calls, REST API calls
Okay.
to control your firewall, or use the GUI. It's got a GUI too. There's a nice GUI plugin for it if you want to use it. And there's load balancer as a service, so if you need to fire off a load balancer, all this stuff is the API-driven infrastructure. Is so when things are defined in software, there's less human interaction when something needs to happen. You write that in automation, you write it in any sort of automation code that you'd like, and then let's say I wanted to rip apart my whole system right now and burn it to the ground and rebuild it. With automation and doing my firewall policy in automation, it would happen the same way. As soon as I got it back to a usable state, could fire off that automation, I'd be right back to where I was in a few minutes. Defining things in software that used to be hardware functions, like these pfSense box. That's a hardware function still, because you can't integrate pfSense with anything else. You still got to log into the console. You want to spin up a route, you got to go on the console. You want to change firewall rules, you got to go on the console. That's crap. I want to be able to manage my compute, my network, my storage, all from one interface. That's why.
I will say, it looks like OpenSCAP has come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
This looks pretty slim.
Queens is pretty pictured. OpenStack Queens is the latest release. It's pretty awesome. I wouldn't switch every bit of my infrastructure over to OpenStack, because like I also use FreeNAS. Ever heard of FreeNAS?
Mm-hmm.
They have an OpenStack plugin now, so you can get block devices from FreeNAS without having to log in on the console. Spins them up, connects them to a VNet, and it just works. Like, I like FreeNAS. I've trusted it with my data for many years. I'm very comfortable with it. It's not that there's not better storage systems out there, because there are. SAP is probably way better. I'm just comfortable with it. When something goes wrong, I know how to fix it. But I want to be able to. I needed to be able to manage that through the same console as the network stuff. Like, why do I have to keep going to all these consoles? It's stupid. It makes sense.
It does make. And if you're in OpenStack, the interface you would use if you're doing GUI with Horizon, do you do that?
You can still use the Horizon dashboard. It's not a great dashboard. It was designed to be a Python application to show you how to interact with the OpenStack APIs. It's not designed. It's not really designed to be point and click. That can you? Yes. If something doesn't work right, don't cry about it, because it's not. The developer would tell you it was not meant to be point and click.
So is there something that has replaced Horizon, or are we looking at just transferring text files and doing command line?
You can also connect a tool called ManageIQ to OpenStack, and you can start getting all kinds of data that you didn't even know was possible out of your infrastructure. Because OpenStack does all kind of reporting. It tracks everything, because it's when you define your compute, network, and storage in software, you can then start to gather metrics on it. And ManageIQ, which is the upstream for Red Hat CloudForms, will gather all that data. And you can also connect it to AWS. So if it's my local stuff is out of compute capacity, it just fires it off into AWS or something like that. So pretty cool stuff. In case you guys didn't know, Ansible Tower was recently open source, so there's now an upstream for Ansible Tower called AWX.
Cool.
If you guys have never used Ansible Tower, it's awesome.
Okay.
Everything you want Ansible
I played
to
with
do.
demos of it. That's all.
Yeah, everything you want Ansible to do, Ansible Tower does. Like Ansible core is great. Like it works. Works very well. But you got to call it like a bash script, or put it in a systemd service, or something like that, where Ansible Towers takes care of all that crap for you. Like everything you wanted Ansible to do. What if I wanted to run this playbook? I got a playbook that hardens my system security, but if it fails, what's the next step? Well, with the Ansible Tower, you can have a primary playbook that runs, and if it succeeds, it goes on to the next. If it fails, it goes on to something else. You can generate a workflow, and you don't have to write that in code, because doing that in your playbook logic it sucks. It's hard.
And you can make mistakes.
And you can make mistakes very easily.
Yeah.
But with the Ansible Tower, you can generate a workflow. So you don't have to take care of the logic. You can dynamically generate the logic, and that way you can focus. You can really focus your plays on what they're designed to do, not handling errors, not handling failure. Who cares? There's tools for that. So pretty cool stuff.
Very cool. Sounds like Ansible Tower is in a position to replace satellite.
Well, satellite still does a whole ton of things that Ansible Tower will never do. Content management being the primary. How do you get an offline clone of the Red Hat network and not have to change all of your systems all the time, because it's painful and not specifically fun. The satellite mimics what the Red Hat network does.
So the basic upgrades, system upgrades, you still need to.
Well, yeah, and then you know, when you're pointed at, by default subscription manager is turned on, and satellite mimics what the Red Hat Net CDN does to a T. Like it's a way that it functions. It's literally the same components as the Red Hat CDN.
So you said Ansible is agentless?
That's Ansible's agentless. So anything that has a SSH connection or a WinRM connection, you can control the Ansible.
The credentials from the authenticate to the
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
So your connection is just, maybe you still need to have your SSH keys back and forth, but it's different.
You can use passwords if you want to not put in SSH keys. You can still use passwords, and it will also sudo for you.
So I know that's one of the problems with Puppet is just making those frickin' keys work, and it's just pull out your hair.
Right? It's like, why does it not work?
Yes. Well, you know why it doesn't work.
Yeah, I know why it doesn't work. But
I got some ideas, because what we do is we use Intel Nux devices, the small computers, and we call them drones. So all of our remote clients, when we do the penetration testing work or vulnerability assessment, we set up a device with all our tools and ship it to the client. And it reverse SSH into our server and re-SSH into our server. And from there, actually we do remote assessment. We don't have to go to California or Venezuela.
But you have it pre-configured before you ship.
Yeah, we have to pre-configure it before I ship to them. So that's basically, we do that for our clients where they're not making a lot of money. So instead of us going on site, we send out the drone. It's just deploy over there, and we do somebody over at our office just run the scans and do the work for us. So we have at a time maybe 2 or 3 drones working. So maybe there's a way to centralize and manage them through Ansible and run some commands simultaneously.
Yeah, you could absolutely do that. In Ansible, you can put Ansible in pull mode. So when it connects, like when Ansible runs, it will pull from something. Instead of you pushing down to something, pushing a command down to it, the Ansible, like let's say on your drone, you were to install Ansible and put it in pull mode, it would just connect with Git repo, your centralized location, pull down its code, execute it, start executing it off, and then fire back off a report when it's done.
There's some potential there.
Yeah, and you'll get consistent results. You could use, and you could also connect it to your tower. Remote.
Is Ansible commercial or is it open source?
Ansible Tower is the supported version of the AWX project. The AWX project is upstream.
Okay.
Check it out. It's pretty cool stuff.
Probably
Do you find it useful? Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
Good thing on the Ansible is it didn't get crazy on. Some of those technologies are really expensive for not a whole lot of value. A whole lot of value. So that's pretty much all I got.
Cool.
Hopefully you guys have found this useful.
It is actually. It was very useful.
A lot of people just don't even know these tools exist. They don't think about it.
I used OpenSCAP, but I was in a scale environment. I used them, but I did not know that you can export out different things and input into the automation. So automation is the new thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, and that was a huge. So the last time I was here, I did an OpenSCAP talk. That was all I talked about was OpenSCAP, and all it would generate you is a bash script, which did work.
Yeah.
It was just really hard because when it throws an error, it just stopped and didn't implement the rest of the security plan. I want it to just keep going, like just keep on chugging.
Here's where it's broken. You're on your own, friend.
Go on to the next one. And you have to write that in bash. Every single one, and Ansible, if you want to skip an error, just have it keep chugging along, even if there is an error. You just put, so like when failed, ignore. That's it. I can do that in automation. That's pretty much all I got. And I would be happy to come back out and talk about OpenSCAP and Kubernetes and their integration, which continues to get richer and richer as time goes on.
Sounds good. I'll be in touch.
A lot of the people, there's some Kubernetes people out there that seem to think that it should be run on metal, that you'll get better performance out of it on metal, but that's not true, because we can clearly see that from virtualization technology, I can get a VM to perform faster than metal, just because I can skip a whole bunch of tasks that usually need to be done. I can skip things in the underlying kernel that I didn't need to do, or I can have some client-side caching magic that helps make my VM move a little faster than it would if it was on metal. That's why we did that to begin with. So VMs are, at this point, faster than most people's metal is.
Cool.
Cool
Sounds
stuff.
good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we can come out and talk about OpenShift and OpenStack. OpenShift is Red Hat's upstream for its product OpenShift, but OpenShift does all the things that Kubernetes does not do. Bare Kubernetes is designed for container management, lifecycle. That's it. Turn a container on, tell it where to run, and all that stuff is fine and good, and you kind of need it. But how do you build a container to begin with? How do you get the software put together to begin with? How do you do role-based access control? How do you do all the production-y things somebody might want to do with a system?
I'm seeing a lot of stuff on Twitter about Builda.
Oh yeah, Builda.
Yeah, and we know who that came from.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was definitely shout out to
Dan Wall.
Dan Walsh. Yeah, Builda's pretty cool. Help people posture themselves for the container revolution, because that is coming. The container revolution is definitely coming. Tell people to get on